breaking the law, 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 breaking the law.
Yeah, that is correct in Newhall, and we're not on the 5 any longer. This vehicle is traveling at such a high rate of speed, we believe well over 100 miles an hour at times. We're on the 126 headed westbound away from the 5, so this will take us out of Santa Clarita out into Fillmore, Santa Paula, that direction, all the way towards the 101 if it would continue. Now, the vehicle's traveling at such a high rate of speed that the patrol cars have not been able to keep up with it at this point in time. They've laid back. Now, it was just a failure to yield. I don't believe we have an air unit overhead with us. It's Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies initially that started the pursuit, so we believe that the air unit's overhead or headed this way. In the meantime, we're keeping an eye on this, but from time to time, this vehicle, a gray Honda, or gray Hyundai, I should say, that was pulled over for failure to yield. Exactly why they pulled them over initially, we're not sure, but they did not yield. They continued at a high rate of speed in some surface streets in the Santa Clarita area in Newhall, then onto the 5 freeway northbound, and now onto the 126. But you get an idea how fast the car is traveling when it whizzes past other cars that are probably doing the speed limit at 65 miles an hour. So that gives you an idea of the speeds we believe close to 100 miles an hour at times. And at this point in time, we're going to help law enforcement to keep an eye on this because the air unit's not overhead, and I don't see a patrol car within a mile or two of this vehicle. And that gives you an idea just how fast at times they were traveling.
Well, Scott, this car wasn't always on the freeways, correct? We have initial reports of blowing through stop signs and on surface streets.
That's correct. It was basically in the North Ranch area of Santa Clarita, in and out of surface streets, running through stop signs and stoplights. We don't believe that there was an accident, but certainly the individual was driving recklessly and at a high rate of speed in an area where it was very dangerous. Exactly why they don't have a unit right on top of this vehicle or behind the vehicle, especially since we don't have an air unit overhead, is a little surprising, but the traveling so fast at one point in time, I'm not certain they were able to keep up. It was a couple of larger CHP vehicles, some SUVs that were pursuing this vehicle when we first caught up with it right off the 5 freeway on the 126. And when I look back, I just don't see any patrol cars that are within probably a mile or two of this vehicle. The air unit not overhead yet either. So at this point in time, it's difficult for them to track the car. I'm sure they've called ahead as we head into the Fillmore area. There will probably be more CHP vehicles assisting LA County Sheriff's deputies now as we're on this portion of a highway, the 126, as we come up to an area where, though, the speeds are still pretty high and we don't have much in the way of traffic.
Well, that's the thing that makes this somewhat unusual, Scott, as you described the fact that there's nothing in the air above this pursuit other than you, I suppose. And then now look at the danger here going into that middle lane and the fact that no CHP right behind this vehicle. So this is a different type of pursuit. High rate of speed for this gray vehicle. And you see this person really, now it seems to be trying to figure out a way to go around. Where are they heading, Scott? They're merging to a different road.
Correct. They just got off onto a small little surface street that heads north of the 126, and I'm not certain what this street is. Now, a lot of times we'll get our information on the streets from the CHP and listening to their scanners, so it makes it a little more difficult at this point in time. But he slowed quite a bit, going into a lot next to a home, and now making a U-turn and headed back on this street, which would put him back on the 126. For a moment there, it looked like maybe the individual was familiar with this area, was trying to get out on foot and make a run for it. That usually is the best bet for someone who's being chased and a patrol car is not right behind them. But now they're headed back towards the 126, and at this point they'll be able to either go back the direction they headed back to the east or continue west, but with a right turn are headed back to the west on the 126 once again. So what was in the mind of that individual when they got off for a moment, turned around, and then got right back on the 126 is hard to say, but still no air unit. Now, one is en route. When they get overhead, we will pass the information along to them that we have, and we do not have a patrol car right behind the vehicle either. It'll be interesting as we go a little further, though, to see in some of these intersections if CHP isn't standing by to pick this individual up. You know, lots of times we'll see them go into surveillance mode, but usually it's when they have an air unit overhead and they can make sure that they at least have an eye on the individual as the patrol cars back off so they don't push the driver to drive at such excessive rates of speed. But in this case, he's coming up on an intersection here and at least slowing. There we go. At some point in time, we had seen that individual run through red lights, and I believe that was also a red light initially that he went through right there.
Well, one of the things I noticed, Scott, is after his right turn and he got back up on the 126, he passed one of the same vehicles, a big rig, it looked like at least a trailer, or rather a cab of a big rig without hauling a trailer. He passed that same red vehicle just a moment ago. Maybe without anybody close in pursuit, it could have been simply this guy thought he could get away. Maybe making that right turn and then heading, trying to get away, realized there wasn't anything to do that direction. So now, again, as Scott said, we're back on the 126, it looks like. And once again, Scott, this person driving somewhat recklessly, going around many vehicles. We've seen him go into that center lane there, and certainly now in the right-hand lane, and we don't know exactly what his motivation is, don't know really why he took off, other than initially it was a failure to yield. We've watched this person blow through some intersections, fairly high rate of speed, up over 100 miles an hour at times. We've seen him going about 95 miles an hour on some of these smaller streets, and it hasn't always been on the 5 freeway nor on the 126. This guy was on some surface streets as well. So again, it is a gray vehicle of some sort, wanted for a failure to yield, began in Santa Clarita, but now we've gone up into the Fillmore area. But Scott, this thing's moving around pretty quickly, and he'll be moving city to city fairly easily.
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, at this point in time on the 126 here, even at high rates of speed without much in the way of traffic, not that it's safe, by all means, it's certainly not safe, but as far as the chance of injury to someone, if this driver, who appears to have pretty good control of the vehicle, just drives at a high rate of speed and stays in the lanes and avoids the traffic, it doesn't look like it's that dangerous at this point. But the 126, if you're familiar with it, it'll run away from the 5, it'll head out through Fillmore, Santa Paula, and then down into the Ventura area, which could make things challenging for us because it appears up ahead in the Fillmore, Santa Paula area that we do have a layer of fog or a marine layer that may push us down a little lower than we can actually get to continue to follow this individual, at least to do so safely. Now, there was a patrol car that just went by him, and that patrol car is now turning around. It's about a mile behind the vehicle, and now we at least have one patrol car that is continuing to follow this vehicle on the 126. But once again, the surprising thing is the fact that there's no patrol car right on this individual when there's not an air unit overhead. I explained earlier that sometimes they take surveillance mode, they'll back off, but usually that's when an air unit still has an eye on the the suspect vehicle.
One of the things I'm curious about, Scott, if you're talking about going up into the Ventura area and maybe losing the possibility to follow this because of low ground, the fog that has sunk into the area, so too would any other pursuit helicopters, correct? I mean, then it would really be imperative to get on the ground behind this guy.
Well, yeah, that's definitely the case. And, Philip, what happens is, we have separation with law enforcement at their helicopters. So sometimes they can get down under a marine layer and they can follow this individual, follow right on. We need separation from the air unit. I think we may be losing the signal a little bit. We're getting down into an area where we have to fly low, and we may have to change the mountaintops. But we're coming up into the Fillmore area on the 126, and we're going to get into a lot more congestion here. We're going to get into an area where there are several stoplights, where the vehicle's going to have to stop, and we'll really get an idea at just how desperate this individual is to get away or to continue moving. There's a patrol car, I believe, that is about a half a mile behind, is going to come up on this vehicle here in a moment, and then in just a moment we're going to hit some of these intersections in Fillmore, right where the 23 comes down, and then up ahead of us, you don't quite see it yet, there is a marine layer that is quite a bit lower. I believe we can get under that, but it does give us some challenges as far as our signal is concerned. But this will be interesting here as we get towards an area where there is a lot of congestion.
Well, you can certainly see the rate of speed this guy's willing to go. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there are 2 people in this car, or do we know for sure at this point?
I'm sorry, Philip, I was distracted there for a moment. Could you repeat that?
Well, initial reports, I think, had 2 people in the car. I'm not quite certain if we've confirmed how many people are in this car. But you're noticing over and over how desperate he is to get in and out of traffic. And like you said, it does appear as if he's coming up on more congestion.
Yeah, it won't last for long, and I think we have the assistance of SkyMap coming up now, or SkyMap, and it's fantastic. 45 miles an hour or so, traveling through these intersections in Fillmore. I think we just passed the intersection with 2 an hour, weaving in and out.
Well, we are seeing some of your signal break up now, Scott. We might get you to reset there. As your signal breaks up a little bit, we can see that it's West Ventura Street, and we see this rate of speed slowing down as he went through an intersection, but still almost 70 miles an hour on that road there as he's making his way through West Ventura Street. And again, signal breaking up just a little bit, and we're apologizing for that. But SkyMap 7 really gives us an opportunity to see the streets that he's on. And again, we can see the desperation clearly as he's driving in the turn lane there, Scott. And I think we've reestablished your signal pretty well.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we understand that CHP is actually watching our footage now to try and get an idea where this individual is, and they can see on the sky map what we can, and that's the speeds. They can approximate where he'll be in a few moments. We're coming up on some fog. I think for the moment, though, we'll be able to get down and deal with this. But we're leaving the area where there's some congestion in Fillmore. The next really area we'd come up with would be Santa Paula.
He said he's coming up on Santa Paula there. This pursuit began in Kern County. Kern County Sheriff said a deputy from their Frazier Park station actually spotted what is now being determined a stolen car. They lost the vehicle on eastbound Highway 138 shortly after 9 a.m. So this pursuit has been going on now for about 2 hours. As you saw just a moment ago before the signal broke up, we're on Highway 126 in the Fillmore area, driving at a very high rate of speed. There were a lot of cars that were starting to get out on that road, and you saw that vehicle more than comfortable driving into the center turn lane and trying to bypass traffic that way. Of course, that leads to all kinds of problems in the event that somebody coming the other direction might not realize that there's a chase on the way and that this person ends up in their lane as they're making a left turn. So, Scott, we've got your signal back. We can once again see this person continuing to drive over on the shoulder. He's driven in that turn lane in the middle. And as we see SkyMap 7, 93 miles an hour on Highway 126. Unfortunately, really difficult with our digital signal there. Sometimes it breaks up. Now we're back in it. This is the video that we have of a little bit earlier, so bear with us as we try to get Air 7's signal straightened out and ready to go, and we'll get back to it live as we can. But CHP has been following this chase, but at about a half a mile distance, maybe a mile at times. We've seen this person make a turn, we think possibly trying to get away, but they got back on Highway 126. I don't know if we've resumed with live coverage or if that is still tape. Still tape right there as we're trying to get Scott Reif's signal. But CHP has now resumed. They are on the chase. They're trying to get their air units over it. Air 7 HD has been able to really get on top of this and follow this. But we are starting to get closer and closer to fog, some marine layer out there in Ventura County as they start moving off in that direction. But again, it was the Kern County Sheriff and their Frazier Park station that had actually started up with this. At some point, it was on the 5 freeway, northbound. They were up there near Rye Canyon, but then eventually got onto the 138. And as I remember correctly, we were on the 126 heading out westbound, I believe, is the direction that we were heading, westbound 126. So we have Air 7 HD back now. And so we're going to be able to get back with Scott Reif and find out exactly what's been happening as we try to reestablish that signal. Again, our speed looks to be 45 miles an hour. And, Scott, as we stepped away showing video, did we see anything that we need to reset here?
Well, we have the vehicle getting off the 126 onto a dirt road. And unfortunately, you know, the patrol car is way behind. They won't be able to see where he turned into. There we go. Just get around to the other side. We're going to try and follow this individual, or two. It looks like at least two. That appears to possibly be a woman who got out of the driver's side and a man who's now making a run for it. We're in a avocado grove or a citrus grove right off the 126 at Timber Canyon Road. So that's going to be really key information for CHP or Kern County Sheriff or Ventura County Sheriff, depending on which agencies try and get on this. If you widen up a little bit, is the woman right behind him going in the same direction?
Well, Scott, it does
somewhere else.
It does appear as if for the moment he was waiting on her, but
to
then
the left.
Yeah, then now they're split
both
up.
in here.
She's up closer to the road, up at the top of our screen. Now the suspect that you're looking at, the man, has come back in the direction of his car. So there for a moment it looked like they were trying to stay together. And Scott, I think because CHP had laid back a little bit, they thought that they had escaped the cover, or they thought they were being able to drive around unseen. Now the man has taken off his hat.
Well, open up a little bit. They tried to take off in different directions, but the fact that they're in this one orange grove is going to make it very difficult, because if you go to the left, you're up on the 126 once again, and I'm not sure where the woman is that took off, so we'll go back to the man in question there. But it's right off Timber Canyon Road. We know that law enforcement now knows that. They're getting that information from us. It can only run so far, and then they're going to be able to come to us, and we'll show them where these individuals are, at least this one man. We've lost track of the woman. But I do not see, there's the first patrol car right now coming off the 126 onto Timber Canyon Road into this orange grove. There is a home here that he's somewhat far away from. It's hard to say if they're familiar with this area or they just noticed all of a sudden that they could get off the road. Yeah, there's a vehicle. It looks like maybe he looked for a moment to see if he could get inside. I'm trying to pick him up outside and see how close he is to this home in question, which could raise concerns as well. But there's another street. If you took that street down, there would be a home. But he continues to just run through the trees now and try and avoid law enforcement. But there's only one unit here. There's not an air unit overhead yet. So at this point, they're still trying to respond to this location to see if they can get these two in custody.
Well, what's interesting is to watch his mannerisms after he got out of the car. Eventually, first he got out of the car and took off very quickly, tossed his hat off to the side in case somebody had identified him by his hat. And what was interesting, Scott, is he would run and then he would stop and walk somewhat casually, or at least trying to appear as if he's just a person that belongs in that area. It still seems to me his behavior makes it look like he doesn't think that they know where he is and that somehow he'll be able to blend into his surroundings. But again, we now have two people on foot that have been involved in a pursuit for some 2 hours now. So there's a man and a woman. We've got the man right here on Air 7 HD. Scott has been able to get on him. And, Scott, he's coming up on this house. We don't know if he's armed, but this creates a whole new issue for law enforcement.
It does, and what we want to get out is Timber Canyon Road comes off the 126. The very next driveway is a driveway for law enforcement that runs into this house here. Now, for a moment there, I thought maybe the individual parked there and this was his home or he knew somebody who lived there, but he didn't go into the house. There's a portion of the barn there, and he's under that grouping of trees. But for law enforcement, if they're watching, Timber Canyon Road is where they all got off, but if you go one driveway or one exit, if you will, to the west, from where they got off on the car, that's the street that you see right there where the suspect is hiding. Now, we lost track of the woman. I believe she's still in the orange grove. She wasn't nearly as quick as the man was as far as her speed. The man, we believe, is right down in this grouping. And once again, at one exit west of Timber Canyon Road, if law enforcement is getting the message, and they are. They just now are pouring into the street. Actually, unfortunately, the first officer, tilt up a little bit, Tad, and show me the 126. The first officer that went by missed it. There we go. If you're watching us, this is the right street. If the information is getting to law enforcement from us, that is the correct street that the patrol car just turned onto right now. So we'll come back off that and see if we can pick up the suspect once again in this grouping of trees, just maybe considering that he's continuing to run to what would be the north and maybe get into some deeper areas where he could hide.
If we can avoid pushing in if we can avoid pushing in too tight, we might be able to catch some movement.
We saw him for just a moment right in that area, which isn't too far down the street. So law enforcement, if you're listening, if you continue to come down this street past the barn, there'll be a red barn on your left. If you continue 100 yards past the barn, that's where the man is inside the trees. They are just moving slowly north. Open up your shot right now. You can see he has the door open. And if you're listening to us, which we think they are, taking our feed, open up more. There's the car. He's going to be about 100 yards in front of you if you continue north. So if they get a radio call to that individual and you continue going, we think that's where the suspect is, about 100 yards north of where those patrol cars just pulled up.
Well, and the one thing is, without coming out of that, if he comes out of that grove, he's going to be in much more open territory. So we have not seen him come out of that grove, and the tighter we get, the more difficult it is to potentially see movement. But now if we stay right about there, maybe we'll be able to pick up, because he has been willing to move quite a bit distance, and so we'll just kind of continue to see if the officers, again, we're looking for a person who is bald. He just tossed his hat away, was wearing jeans, and jogged away from a stolen vehicle. He left his female companion because she could not keep up with him. She was wearing a long dress. We don't know if they thought they could escape by going into this area, or possibly because of the length of the pursuit, maybe they were getting low on gas and they felt like this was their best option, pulling into this orchard, jumping out of the car and taking off running. So again, a man and a woman in this area This is near Fillmore. Not sure if we know exactly. Scott, do we have a city that we're looking at this point? Santa Paula, is that okay? So we're in Santa Paula near Telegraph Road?
There you go. And see the sky map on the bottom. It's Santa Paula still. It's in Ventura County off Telegraph Road. That's the exact spot, and the sky map is so useful for that. It's really quite incredible. Well, one of the things you don't see in this picture is that if the suspect continued past those row of trees, it goes into an area where there are more groves, but the groves are not as well grown, and it would be difficult to hide. So we're fairly certain that if law enforcement, once again, if you're watching, it would be to the east side of where the patrol cars. That grouping of trees is where the suspect was last seen, and we were looking, we didn't see him come out of that grouping. If he goes any further north, he'd be visible immediately, and then if he goes back to the east, he'd be headed back towards where the pursuit terminated, where the vehicle was parked and they ran from, and we don't expect that because there's more units there. So it's just a matter of time. The suspect will be taken into custody. There's little to no chance that those individuals will be able to get away unless they knew this area, that was their house, and that would concern me initially. If you were smart, you might park a ways away and then run into the house and say, I don't know what's going on. But that was not the case. They're in this grouping of trees, and it's just a matter of time. There's another home in the area. You know, you always get concerned. We come out just a little bit on the top of your screen when there's a house, a family, people working. I've seen someone out working in the grove. You have a suspect that could be armed and is obviously desperate to get away. It just brings up the potential for harm.
Well, Scott, what we're going to do now is we're going to allow CHP officers and the Sheriff's Department to continue this chase and continue what they're going to do, which is eventually, as you said, take this person into custody. There are two people they're looking for. This current area is the male suspect. We believe he was the driver who jumped out of that gray sedan and took off running. There is a woman that is in this orchard, generally speaking. You see one of the officers right there. He might even... and I can't really tell if he spotted anybody, but he is in communication. So we're going to monitor this situation. Scott Reif's going to remain above it in Air 7 HD. But as we continue here on Eyewitness News at 11 a.m., we will resume our newscast now. So we'll monitor that and bring you...